Hello, and welcome to the NoFruitPodcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Maurice.
And this is Kafa.
We thank you for tuning in today. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome to October. It's hard to imagine that this year has passed us by this quickly. But here we are in the month of October, and as we're looking at October, I'm also looking into November, where we have to go out and cast our votes. So on today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about politics and politics within the church. So just recently, the political presidential debate was on television, and a lot of questions were there in reference to how much of a debate was really going on and things like that. So it made me think a little bit about the church, and I recalled a little bit, Maurice, about just how political the church is. And I know that when you and I first met, you were positioning for and vowing for a position within the church. Mm-hmm. And the church has a lot of different positions, and you have to cast votes for those. And no, there's not a debate or anything like that in the political scene, but it was, for me, it was my first experience of seeing that type of church politics on the larger level, where we were handing out flyers, if you will, saying, vote for Maurice for, I think it was second vice president. Yes. You were trying to get of a multiple church group, if you will. So it wasn't just anything locally. It was help me out.
It was no, it wasn't connectional. It was for a youth group that covered multiple states. For those of you who are AME, it was for the First Episcopal District, YPD. Young People stands for Young People's Department. It spans over the states of all of New England, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Bermuda.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So I was vying for a position to become the second vice president over this group. So we're talking thousands of young people in this larger denomination.
And so many of them were there at this particular conference. And I remember the bus ride up, kind of talking to people and kind of encouraging them about this vote, that Maurice is a great guy, and that, so I was like his campaign manager, I felt like, as we had newly started dating, and was trying to let people know about who he was and what he was doing and things like that, and how great of an asset he would be within the church. Mm-hmm. And then, so that was the bus ride up. And then I remember that weekend, it was a weekend experience. And I remember even over the weekend, still encouraging people to vote for you. I recall even as we were placing the votes that, kind of still saying, you see his name, like, but, vote for him and that type of thing. I remember you walking around. And it was like, again, one of my first experiences in a political way of seeing the church and how serious it was in some aspects. It was fun, but also very, very serious within it coming to the votes and the ballots and everyone getting up and making sure that, all of the procedures were done correctly and, having people to be the secretary and count the votes and count the heads and making sure that those that were in the room were voting. And, I think there were some issues and we kind of had to get started all over again. So it was just very, very interesting. And I don't know that everyone sees that part of church and appreciates that part of church. I hadn't, and I mean, at this time, I think we were dating. I was well out of college and whatnot, so I hadn't experienced it, and I think I learned a lot from it. And so from that, I view church differently, and I also view, I guess, in the worldly side, the political system a lot differently. I mean, no, in high school, I was a part of a debate team, so I learned the technique of debate, but I didn't understand the political process and how political, because you always hear, the separation of church and state. And so I didn't know how much of that worldly political part was truly a part of the church politics. And I'm sure that it's more, if they're doing this for the young people within, like you said, the young people's department, then I'm sure that it's also present in other parts of church. And I don't know about other denominations. I've only experienced that to that magnitude within the AME church.
Right.
So what about you? I mean, you have been, of course, because you ran for that office, and I think you ran for some others. Tell me a little bit about what you think. And again, I guess because you came up and you were raised in church and more of a leader within the church, so you may have better understanding of it, or it seemed like second nature to you. It didn't seem so different.
So by the time you had come around, I had ran for numerous offices.
Right.
I had been president within that organization, within the YPD, of one of my local church since I was like 10, 11 years old. And then,
did you have to go through that whole same process?
No, I did not.
Okay.
It was more or less like, yo, you here, bam. But then a funny thing happened. I ended up being around 12, 13 years old. I ended up being president of what was called the West Main Line. Well, what was called the West area at that time.
Okay.
And so you have about, I can't remember now. I don't know if it was 17 or 19 churches. So, so from a young age, I was, within that political vibe, so to speak. And in that, what were my responsibilities at 12, 13 years old? It wasn't a whole lot, to be honest. But by the time I had become, I think it was 17, I was second vice and then first vice the year after for the Philadelphia Conference YPD, where I had to, the first year I didn't have to run. The second year I did have to run a little bit just to build up some steam, I guess. And but in that I learned how to go to other churches and go and talk to people and speak to people and hear what they have to say and understand what's their concerns, both from the young people's perspective of, hey, what are you looking for? What do you want to do?
And that's how you and I met.
Well, I'm getting to that point. So then, so that's where I learned that as second vice. When I had become first vice, because I had heard all those things my first year as second vice, by the time I was first vice, I was able to push it a little bit more especially because our president was in college. So I was a little bit more of the face at that time.
Right.
And so you're right. So by that time, you had, we had met. Yes, we had met. Because that was around 18, 19 years old, somewhere around there. That's where we had met. So, and in that particular meeting, with nothing but adults there. You know, it was just myself really being the only other young person there, speaking about what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish, which at that time I was trying to sell us having a basketball tournament, and it was something else. I can't remember offhand. So yeah, so, you know, so, and then for me to be introduced to you was kind of refreshing to see another young person at this director's meeting.
Right.
But you know, in these moments and times, I've always been able to, take from those moments. I've been able to learn how to smooth a little bit,
Right.
so, and how to address the needs of the people that I'm trying to either influence or speak on, you know, whatever. So I've always had that inside of me. So when it comes down to this presidential debate and what's going on, you know, I think because of that heart that I have for it from a church perspective,
And a heart for the people.
that I do believe that this last debate fell extremely short overall, and I think our elected officials fall extremely short of what the people of the United States of America need and what the people of the United States of America want. And I understand those sometimes are one and the same, and sometimes they're very vastly different. But I think that they're falling short. And so in dealing with the young people, you know, of course, young people, we really don't know what we want. To be honest, we have to decipher it. We have to make it up as we go along, you know, things like this. Right. So, and then having to, because we don't know overall what that is, and then for me to have to take that, put it together, and then turn around and sell it to these adults. You know, again, I've learned really, really early on how to make the subject matter to the people, and to sell it. So I think that's how I learned that, and being able to move the crowd, so to speak. You know, go ahead.
I think as you're stating that, you know, today's politicians in the world, I guess, could take a note from the youth leaders of the church. But I think some of what you had, and maybe what some of the youth of the church have, maybe even today, I'm not sure, is that because they're youth and they're leading youth. So therefore they're a little more connected. So it's more so, what do we want? And not necessarily as in the world, but what do people from my area want?
Well, I think real quick, I think the difference is, for me as an individual, I listen to the younger kids too, not just teenagers. Right. So I think that's where because I understood the value in the 6-year-olds to the 12-year-olds. Right. I understood their value. Now, you know, the 5-year-olds really don't know what they want to do. They just want to color and some crayons and stuff, you know. But and I'm saying that to say that our politicians, I think they only listen to a certain group, which might be the 13 to 17-year-olds. I mean, mind you, this group only went up to the age of 26. And so in reality, which would, I guess, the 20s, 21s to 26 would have been considered senior citizens, I guess. You know, if we had to look at it from that perspective, they technically were non-factors. Right. In essence, they were non-factors. And, you know, you'd be like, well, Maurice, what you talking about? Well, like, how could they be non-factors? Well, let's think about this for a second. 18 to 21, 22, where are you?
You're in college. At that particular time, most of the folks were in college.
And then after that, what are you really doing from 22 to 26 in all reality? You know, and that means that you're graduating to college, you know, you're graduating with, hopefully with your undergrad. you're maybe considering going for your some type of graduate degree, and or you are getting into your field. Hopefully, you can do that, and you're starting to find yourself. So your circle changes. Your job search. You're not sure where your job is going to take you. Things like that. Other thing is, that age group always said they felt too old to be with the 13 to 17-year-olds too.
Mm-hmm.
So because again, the cares and wants were way different by that time.
And we have to think about, for some of those in that older young adult age, that in our time frame, some of them had children themselves.
Right.
So for you to put them in that same group, in that same category, in that same club as their children.
Right.
If I'm 24 and I have a 4-year-old kid or a 5-year-old kid, then, no, I don't want to kind of hang out with them in that regard.
Or not even if you are hanging out, you're hanging out because you're helping to teach that particular age group.
Right.
So you're no longer trying to be the president or vice president, of that organization. So in those type of cases, in reality, I believe, as we're speaking about it, I wonder if that's the reason why it became so male heavy.
Mm-hmm.
In those situations.
You mean politics as a whole became male heavy?
Well, I'm just thinking, I'm just talking about we're just relating from this organization.
Okay.
Is this the reason why politics overall is male heavy?
Mm-hmm.
Because unfortunately, the ladies are concentrating on other things, meaning the home,
right,
meaning the kids, things like that, and the male is out there doing whatever they need to do, so they have the time to become a little more involved in becoming a mover and a shaker, quote unquote, in that realm.
And I think things have changed, like even with what's going on in the political scene right now, where we see a lot more women in politics, and some folks are questioning, if you will, how much time do they have for their family? How much time do they have for, as you said, their spouse and making home, if you will? But things have changed, the family structure has changed in some aspects. Some folks, have housekeepers and nannies and other things that weren't so readily available years ago.
Yeah, I mean, in all reality, you no longer have the homemaker mentality, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that sometimes sometimes with the careers competing, then it appears that something's being left behind, or things aren't going to work right, and then when you think about some of these young, these kids, when they speak about certain things, you'd be like, well, wasn't your parents around? Like, yes, I understand they went to work, but sometimes I guess, one, the male is used to being the dominant, talking about being a breadwinner and all that type of stuff. And then the lady is trying to become something more. She has more hurdles and stuff. So sometimes the kids get left behind.
Right.
And you wonder, like, I used to wonder, I should say, why do the kids feel that way? And as time has moved on, I've understood a little bit better as to when everyone is trying to work and do things and become better than what they've been in the past, the kids, they lose to some degree. They lose. So when you have, Hillary Clinton running for president, well, we got to keep that in mind that her daughter was already grown.
Right.
So she wasn't missing out on anything. She was just doing her own career. Now, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I need to just look it up and see if Kamala has any kids. I'm not sure. To be honest, I haven't even heard anything about her and kids.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I know she's married, but I don't know if she has any children.
Right.
So in that, she's not in that place. She can concentrate a little bit more on her career and moving forward. Again, we're no longer in the 60s and expecting for the lady to become that homemaker and making the house look like whatever it looked at that time.
At that time. So, I mean, I do recall, again, somewhere around the time when we first started dating, our church was very, very focused on the family and the family structure. And I guess that was the political move at that particular time because, again, families were starting to look different as AIDS and HIV was very prevalent. Teenage pregnancy was very prevalent. And so the politics within the church had changed and the focus had changed to family. And I remember a lot of conferences that we went to was focused on family. And, with politics globally and worldwide and here in the United States, I think that is also starting to change or it did, under our previous president, that idea of family changed. So politics plays a lot in our lives. And it's just interesting how in some ways it comes off as there's a battle again between the church and the state, the church and the nation. But they seem to still somewhat overlap and work together. I recall, I don't know about your church, but I recall being young before I could really even understand. But like during this time, like the month of October, every Sunday with some of our pastors, we had a political presence at Sunday service, whether they were just worshiping with us, whether they gave the word, whether they came and spoke in the microphone during announcements and shared what their vision was or what importance it was to vote. So, it's just different. I mean, of course, it's different now because of the pandemic. We don't have that coming together where politicians come into the church and speak. But I think when we were married, one of the churches that we were attending, the pastor wasn't quite sure about that. He was trying to not show sides and didn't feel comfortable, I guess, with politicians coming in and speaking. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think politicians should come in and speak to the church? I mean, for me, I think it was a learning experience because some folks don't get a chance to actually get to those offices and talk to those folks, may not know who they are and what they look like. So I thought it was a win-win. So what are your thoughts?
So I think that that in reality, the church was the hub of the community at one time. Mm-hmm. But now we have so many churches where the people are transplants, there or commuters. Mm-hmm. And the community has changed. The outlook of the community has changed. So a lot of times, and I only can speak about for my own home church, because we did have politicians come in and speak.
Okay.
We did have actually one of our members actually was running for office, for state rep.
Okay.
City council, state rep, and one other thing. But he eventually had become chief of staff for the state rep and the sheriff of the city of Philadelphia, things like that. So, so he was still very much in the political realm. So he also invited those persons to come and speak, so even though, let's say the, membership, it might have been, let's say it was 200 people, Rose might have said 500, of course, but it might only been like 150 or 200 people.
Church,
right.
Yes.
So out of that 200, maybe only 50 lived in the area.
Wow. Okay.
So, but we're talking over a 40, let's say 40 years. Let's just use a round number, 40, 50 years. Understand that they grew, those same persons that made up the 200, that 150 grew up in the neighborhood.
Okay.
But once
they moved out.
Yeah, but they had ended up getting married, having kids, getting better jobs, moving out to bigger houses, different parts of the city. The city, because where the church was located wasn't always safe. So, and they wanted something a little different for their family. So, but overall, I think people can learn from their community persons that are running for office in that particular area, along with, if it's any officers that's running for city, state, and federal agencies. I mean, sometimes it's good to know that. And like you said, that might be the first time, the only time that you ever see them.
Right.
And I think that's the part that's the negative part. That, after that moment, that'll probably be the only time you could actually have two words to get to say to them. Because after that, they'll be tied up and busy. Excuse me. So I think that it's good to have it, but otherwise, for me, like, hey, I only can speak for myself. For where my church was located, I was totally on the other side of the city.
Right,
so,
right.
It, for what they were talking about, some of their concerns wasn't even my concern. And then when we had gotten married, and then we started living in, we were living in the suburbs, and then listened to some, officials trying to be elected. It really didn't matter to me then,
right.
because it was no longer my community per se, my personal community. Yes, I still had ties to it, but it did not affect me immediately.
Correct.
So, a perfect example of, everybody talk about taxes and things like that. So when the city of Philadelphia was fluctuating between 7, 8, 9, 12%, whatever it is today, keeping in mind, me being in the suburbs, it was 6%. So when people talk about, hey, these are what things we want to talk about, we want to lower this and take it from 8 to 7, things like that. Well, for me, it's like, okay, yeah, that's good for y'all. I'm already at 6. So, so it's just those type of things that I think sometimes, because of where those persons live, where those members live, they're not necessarily affected by what those persons say.
Right.
And I think overall that's what happens in churches, as the young people become older, they are no longer a part of that particular church. They're not, at least not the one they had grown up in.
Right. Of that community within the church.
Right. So, so I think they're when it comes to this whole political thing, period, we just have to be very, very careful. We have to listen very carefully, understand what's really being said and what our concerns are versus the good for the people. Because I understand that, sometimes we get caught up in the personal thing.
Right. Or some people just get caught up on the sides. Like I hear so many things about, well, Democrat, and I'm going to vote straight Democrat. I'm Republican, I'm going to vote straight Republican.
Right.
So, and they're not even listening to what these folks are standing for and what their plans are.
Right.
And I think that was one of the issues as we talked to our new young voter. She was concerned that neither one of the candidates for president really had a true plan. And she's a young person, and she's concerned about, hey, this person will be in office when I graduate, so what does my future look like?
Right. And I think, and with our young voter, as I sat there and spoke with her, I realized that her influence is really based off her age group.
Mm-hmm.
So even though she said she was going to vote one way, or had, she was leaning one way, but I think deep down in her heart, she wanted to go the other.
Right.
That's the way I feel. And as I said to her, I will not influence her. It's her God-given right to vote the way she wants to vote. Whether I agree or disagree, because I could say to her all day, yo, you need to vote this way.
Right.
But once she walks in that booth, like, she's by herself. And, and I want to make sure that, that's totally clear that when you walk in that booth, that's between you, the booth, and God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, and don't allow the bullying happen behind the curtain. Like that part I don't understand.
Right.
And I understand that sometimes you could say one thing and do something else, but I really do believe that when it comes to this political piece, in all reality, that, people are so swayed to go one way or the other, as you're stating, whether it's just party and all that type of stuff, and not listening to what the real issues are and are they really being answered. And one of the things we keep hearing right now is like, vote the lesser of two evils. Well, even with that, what is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Right.
So so I think that we have to really take this political season seriously.
Right.
Just like I did back in my late teens, early 20s. I'm taking it as seriously, as I can in my mid 40s now. That, and at that time, I would have to say it was kind of a game. You get what I mean?
Right.
I took it seriously, but didn't take it seriously. Also, as I say, I think about it, like, in reality, was it a political? I'm sorry. Was it what do you call it? Popular?
Competition. Yeah.
Was it more of a popularity
contest?
And in reality, at that particular time, I was very, very popular. I had a lot of, I guess, I had because I was able to schmooze a little bit.
Right.
I was able to have fun and smile and laugh and crack jokes, but at the same time be serious too.
Right.
I had my serious moments, and
I guess that I think in the beginning, deep down inside you cared.
Right.
You cared for the people, and you listened to the people, and you made sure that their ideas were presented to the older population, those who were, held the purse strings, if you will. So again, within our political climate, are our politicians listening to us?
Right.
Especially listening to the church.
Right.
So I guess that's our question for everybody today is, are the politicians listening to the church? And let us know. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And let us know what your thoughts are during this, as you're saying, this heavy political time as we lead up into election day.
Right.
So even as we cast our vote, the Bible says in Proverbs 16:33, even as you cast your vote, the decision ultimately comes from God. And we have seen that through so many different elections that we thought that things were going to go one way, or the popular vote was, as you stated, hey, it's a popularity contest that's popular and everybody voted for this one candidate, but the ultimate decision changed and another person was sitting in their office.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it's all up to God. So we all have to pray, and that God will have his way, because he will.
Right.
But we'll understand it all better by and by. But again, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And while you're there on the internet, on whatever device that you're using, check out Amazon. There's some great things going on Amazon. We have some merchandise for this show and for a lot of other shows that Maurice is a part of. So check us out there. And we encourage you to also email us and stay in contact with us.
And so just to clarify, on Amazon, it's called the Positive Energy Shop. The Positive Energy T-shirt shop.
The Positive Energy T-shirt shop. Got it.
And you can do a Google search for No Fruit Podcast. Now, let's understand too that we are now on Amazon Music. So right. Just as as you're looking for the merchandise on Amazon, we might also pop up on Amazon Music also.
Okay.
So, but we thank y'all very much, and make sure y'all stay fit, and we will see y'all next time. All right, y'all.
God bless you all.
Peace.
This week's episode has come to an end. But the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.